this may be a really, really weird subject. But it's also not been talked about here, and I think it's something that's on people's minds. Which is, where do you live when you have avoidant personality disorder? Which, I mean, this is a big thing. I mean, this is a big thing worldwide. You know, it's difficult to find a place to live. I had an insane time. This has been 2 years, I think, that I've lived here. And it was insane trying to find this place. If you're trying to buy a house, it's really, really difficult. There are pros and cons with everything that you can do. And it might seem like you don't have any choices, but even when you have avoidant personality disorder, you do have choices. So, first of all, you can live with your family of origin if possible. It's actually really, really common for people to do that. I mean, I think that my mother kind of expected that would happen with her, and it didn't. But a lot of people do that, and that the pro is that you could possibly have support. The con is you might continue to live with a person who was causing the trigger, who was abusing you and making you have avoidant personality disorder. And that's pretty rough. The other thing is, of course, people don't live forever. So if you are living with your family of origin right now, I would look at the finances. I mean, I am not a financial advisor. However, I would really look into getting some sort of life insurance policy on these people. This is assuming that they're going to take your dwelling and they would give it to you once they pass on. I mean, there's no guarantee. If you're living with somebody who's abusive, that might be the kind of stunt that they would pull, that they would not even tell you, and that they would will their house to whatever charity or whatever and screw you, you know. If you have siblings, you will have, or actually siblings or a number, like aunts and uncles, or nieces and nephews, or anything. There's a lot of people. You might be forced to split the house, even though you've lived in it forever. You might have to consider that an asset and have to split it up, which means that you would have to then fund whatever was not your percentage. That could be an issue. Also, even if it's 100%, it's your house. If it hasn't been paid off, then you got to pay the mortgage. Even if it's been paid off, you've got to pay for taxes, and you've got to pay for upkeep for as long as you live there. So yeah, if you take out an insurance policy against the people, for the people who own the house, that would be really very helpful to you if you have that place. The next thing is, do you have a job where you could buy your own house? I actually don't like that idea myself. I don't own a house. Because I'm remarkably, obscenely independent. I go on my own, and I'm like, okay, well, you know what? There have been periods where I haven't worked. I haven't been able to work. Something's happened. Either I'm ill or I don't know. And, I mean, there was a long period. It was like almost 5 years where I didn't work at all because I was caring for family members. um, a mortgage and a, tax bill and everything else, things would have been really, really bad if I'd had a huge burden like that. Um, I was able to skate by, um, because, like, even now, it's still cheaper to rent than to pay everything that you have to pay if you own a house. But you could buy a house. I mean, if you have a spouse, there's nothing saying that I mean, the percentages aren't great. It's not the same as the general population, but there's plenty of people with avoidant personality disorder that are married, and then they would have two incomes, and then you could have a house, and then there you go. Pay the mortgage, keep a job. It used to be in the DMC that people with avoidant personality disorder, one of the diagnostic criteria was to be underemployed. If you're single or even married, it might be difficult to buy a house. So the next thing is, are you going to rent? That's a lot easier than buying a house. You still have to be employed and have an employment history and be able to pay for it. Again, can be difficult unless you're married and your spouse is working, and that's great. If you can't do it on your own, which is, it's hard nowadays. It's really hard to get a place on your own, and have a job that can do it. I mean, again, I've made videos, a couple of them, about what kind of job, how to find a job, how to find something that's suited to you to be able to work, that is necessary. There are alternative things that you could do also, which I'm like, ooh, like get a roommate. Now, the benefits of having a roommate is that you have another person to interact with. And, when you have avoidant personality disorder and you can't trust people and you don't think you're worthy of people, the thing that people don't really focus on is sort of the intense need to have people in your life when you have avoidant personality disorder. It's different from schizoid. Schizoid, you don't want people in your life. You're cool with not having people in your life. That's the biggest difference between avoidant personality disorder and schizoid, is that when you have avoidant personality disorder, you have like an intense, almost compulsion to interact with people. And if you don't have a job where you can interact with people, it can really drive you nuts. You got to have people in your life. So if you don't have a family of origin, including family that you make, like I lived with my son for years, or something like that sort of situation, then if you don't have a job where you're interacting with people, which is pretty much ideal for somebody with avoidant personality disorder, or you have a job where you don't spend as much time with your coworkers, and maybe you interact with people on a one-on-one basis, and you don't have many, twice this week I had people be on, like, trying to be repeat customers and are like asked for me specifically, and I'm like, oh, yeah. Pretty horrifying. It stops me cold to think about it. I definitely prefer to have like sort of an anonymous type thing going on with the people I work with, so that there's a few coworkers and I deal with them maybe 10% of the day, maybe less. And then customers that are individual, that I don't have to deal with very often and few repeat customers, that's really working for me. That's what I like. And I know a lot of people with avoidant personality disorder work in that sort of situation. So I actually interact with people quite a bit. So it's okay for me to be by myself, but I also have my cats. I have 2 cats and they're not people, but I'm still interacting with them. They have their own personalities. And, I mean, it sounds nuts to say that my cats are my people, but really, my cats are my people. And, yeah. So, I mean, I can be by myself. I prefer to be by myself. But if you don't have that kind of situation, if you work from home, if you have a more, like sort of technical job where you're just like data entry or something like that, and you don't have to interact with people very much at all, then you might need a roommate of some sort. I highly suggest that if that's the case, because you'll go crazy. You'll be stuck trying to find people to interact with and not really be able to, and like you won't be able to safely feed that compulsion of avoidant personality disorder that you have people in your life that you're interacting with. So a roommate could really take care of that, in addition to helping you find a place to live. If you do get a roommate or whatever, housemates, however you want to call it, you know, I mean, it depends on where you live. If you live in a big city where you're stuck, or like a dorm and you're in college or something like that, you're going to have somebody in your space, like in your space. But make sure that you find like your sort of escape space. Like, you know, I live by myself, so it's basically when I'm home, I'm all by myself, and there's almost never, ever anybody here. I mean, for real, I think it's been more than a year since anybody other than me has been in this apartment. The closest is delivery, and they're outside. They don't actually come inside. It's my space. Make sure you've got something like that going on, that you have a room that you can completely close off and go have as your space. Even if you're married, even if you've got, you know, kids or whatever. I mean, when I had my son, I mean, every single place where we lived, it was like, I mean, this was my son, he was a kid. It was like his bedroom was over here, my bedroom was over here, and all of the communal spaces were in between. I mean, I had really good separation even when he was a kid. Even when he was like insisting on sleeping in my bed as a little kid. You know, that happens. Little kids want to sleep with their parents. When he was little, I mean, it was still like full separation and away from each other. Didn't really work. Like I said, he was constantly in my space. But it's the same with the cats. Cats are in my space, you know. Now, so how do you do that? How do you find a space? I mean, the thing is that once you sort of get it's, my opinion, okay, this is not in any way, shape, or form been studied, although it's something that maybe should be studied for real. Like, hello, is anybody looking at these videos going, I want to do a psychological study? I think that people with avoidant personality disorder get stuck in whatever living arrangement for much longer than other people. And whatever they decide to do, as, you know, because again, your personality is still developing, and then once you're like mid to late 20s, it's set. It seems to me like wherever you are at that point is where you're going to be. This is just based on the people I know that have had avoidant personality disorder. It seems like you really do settle down with whatever you're going to do, and that's it. You know, if you have roommates, you have roommates your entire life. If you are married, you stay married. Again, I mean, that's another thing, is if you have a house and you're married, and then you're kind of stuck, even more than avoidant, tendencies to not get divorced. It just really feels like you'll be bound if you have a house with somebody, whether or not that person is good for you forever, until they die or until you die. Another reason not to get a house. I mean, unless you can just, like, you're independently wealthy somehow. Good for you. Yeah, I don't know if this video is even slightly useful. I don't know if I'm saying anything different from anything that anybody's heard, other than it is possible and you can make choices. And this thing that I'm saying about people sort of get a sort of preference to how they want to live and they stick with it, even that can change. I mean, you might prefer to live in a house, but you could change that. You could change that. But generally, people do what they're going to do. So I just think that it's not something people should sort of stick their head in the sand about and assume this is how things are going to be forever. I think that people should, I mean, the thing is, if you live in an apartment, you might be randomly at any point kicked out. Even if you have a lease, if they sell the building, then the lease is null and void. That's a problem. They can change the amount every year. That's a problem. If you own a house, so what? That doesn't, you might have a set mortgage, but then the taxes are like, they add another $1,000. They add another $10,000 a year. You might lose your job. Things change. So, yeah. And I'm not really sure. Like I said, I make these videos because something's popped up, and I don't really know why that's popped up for sure. Other than, again, might be an anniversary date issue with me. Which, if, basically when you're doing things the same time of each year, good or bad, it might bring things back up that you thought you had dealt with. So it might be that. I don't know. I'm not looking at moving right now, I hope. Because moving sucks. Finding a place sucks. Oof. Everything about it sucks. But yeah, especially if you are not 100% independent. If there's any bit of your living situation that is dependent on somebody else, I would not trust it. You have avoidant personality disorder. You know how it is. You don't trust people. But even if it's somebody that you really think that you can depend on, I mean, people die. It's terrible, but it's true. People change their minds. People lose their minds. Things happen. Take whatever steps you need to protect yourself in case things change. And if you're looking for, there are other totally alternative, there's always like, I can't imagine. There's shelter situations if you had to, especially if you're in an abusive situation. You know, there's off-grid living. Doesn't sound good to me, but it might sound great to you. And if that's, you know, again, that's a way of being hyper independent. You know, there's always the also sounds both great and completely insane. There are the people who live on cruise ships. I mean, they really do. Or even crazier to me, the people who game the system and literally go on cruise after cruise after cruise. Sounds nuts, but yeah, apparently if you build up enough loyalty points with X, Y, and Z, you can get some really good deals, and it's in some cases cheaper to do that than to get an apartment somewhere. And so if you've got remote work that you can literally work anywhere as long as you've got an internet that will support it. I mean, there are people that do it. You know, there's sort of volunteer situations, but it's the same sort of thing because, okay, let's say that you go out and you volunteer. You know what? As a person who went and was an exchange student, yeah, you living with families, you're very much interacting with people, you're a celebrity. And in the back of your head, you're thinking, okay, there is a time limit to this, and I'm going to be out of here, and I won't be interacting with these people. And it's true. When I went and did there is not my family, not anybody. I don't interact with anyone at all. I mean, that was 35 years ago, but still, I don't interact with anybody anymore that I had that experience with. Most of my travels, I don't interact with anybody that I met as a part of my travels. So it would be finite, but then again, you'd just change again. Everything changes. You can't depend on anything. I don't know if this is helpful. I don't know if this is useful. I don't know if there's anybody even worrying about this. But I imagine it is something that people don't talk about, and it is an issue. Where do you live? Who do you live with? How do you live? The space. How do you find that space? I don't know if there's any further interest. Go ahead, ask a question, and I'll see if I can get an answer for you. Because I don't think it's really helpful. Sort of like, yeah, these are the possibilities. Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, I feel like it's a subject that should be brought up more for people with avoidant personality disorder, but people just look the other way and don't think about it. And I understand why. And I'm not really sure until I knew what the questions were, how to answer. Like anticipating what the questions are, not really what I'm able to do right now because it blows my mind. But more like as a discussion, if it's something that you've thought about and you have questions about, I sort of wanted to put it out there as sort of a discussion topic, I guess. Anyway.